son's name was on the list, and he wanted to be picked up from school that day because he was terrified of what was going to happen.
We're starting to get the FBI involved because it's just becoming daunting.
What are parents doing that creates the disconnect where kids do not care about kids?
Students, educators, police officers, parents, plagued by an unprecedented amount of threats to Valley schools, forcing school districts to change their policies and police to make arrests. You are watching a special edition of MOMCAST, where we are talking to police officers and to concerned parents about what we can do today to put a stop to these threats. Welcome to this special edition of MOMCAST. I'm Emma Jade. We are outside of Stapley Junior High in Mesa, just one of more than 24 schools across Mesa Public Schools dealing with threats over the last couple of weeks, causing fear, anxiety. Some parents just taking their kids out of Mesa Public Schools altogether. Others telling their kids to face these fears head on. You're going to hear from two moms, both the center of some threats happening at Stapley Junior High. You're going to hear what they're talking to their kids about, and more importantly, what they hope to do from here on out as a community. Their experiences are gut-wrenching, but unfortunately a reality, not just for kids here at Stapley, not just for kids in Mesa, for kids all over Arizona, for kids all over the country. The New York Times just did an article, 700 arrests made over the last couple of weeks because of online threats. And get this, 10% of those were to kids 12 and younger. Yes, 10% of those arrests, kids 12 and younger. Here in Mesa, they've had more than 15 arrests over the last couple of weeks. One of those arrests, an 11-year-old. If you have kids in school, no doubt over the last couple of weeks, your stomach has turned a time or two because of this rise in threats. It's happening in Mesa, in Buckeye, in Dysart, in Tempe, in Scottsdale, all over Arizona, all over the country. So what is happening? Why the rise in online threats? On the heels of a school shooting in Georgia. September 4th, a 14-year-old boy killed 2 students and 2 teachers at Appalachia High School, injured 9 others. He was arrested. The shooter's father also arrested on murder charges for supplying his son with the gun. But there's more to this story. Police had actually visited the home of the shooter a year prior when he had made threats online and did nothing. Because at the time, police say there just wasn't enough there to arrest him. But unfortunately, after a school shooting like the one happening in Georgia, we typically do see threats start to circulate all across the country. But Mesa police say they have not seen anything quite like this. I sat down with Detective Richard Encinas, who goes over what's been happening in Mesa and, more importantly, what parents need to do. How many threats have we been dealing with over the past couple of weeks?
Honestly, Emma, the number is changing by the hour.
Oh,
Um, so, I wanted to push this back with you a little bit only because of that.
yeah.
Literally day by day, we're getting additional. Every single one of them has either been a student who's just being a knucklehead after being told numerous times what's going to go on, or we're starting to get now, not just us, not just, and it's valley-wide, it's also
Yes.
nationwide.
Yeah.
We're starting to get a lot of spoof emails, or we had one yesterday that came from Romania. We traced the IP, it came from Romania. Since you and I talked or emailed yesterday, we had another one that came out this morning and was sent to, I want to say 8 or 9 schools here in the Mesa Public School District. So we're actively working on that one now. But again, we feel like it's coming from out of the country. So at this point, we're starting to get the FBI involved because it's just becoming daunting, and it's becoming not, I don't want to say overwhelming for our staff, because we'll investigate every single one thoroughly, because we don't want to be that one that we don't look at turns out to be something legitimate. So it's up to like 24 different schools.
Come on.
And as of this morning, we've we've charged 15 students. So it's gone up quite a bit in the last week.
And this is what I think is so important, that parents need to realize you have to watch what your
Correct.
kid is doing on their phone. Because when
Yes.
you say charges, what do some of these kids face who are starting these fake threats?
Yeah, I mean, we had one as young as 11. Um, so between 11 and 18 years old has been the range. And we're trying to focus on the parents because ultimately the police, we can put messaging out, we can talk till we're blue in the face, you can spread that message for us, and it doesn't matter, it's got to come from the family unit, a trusted friend. It's got to come from somebody to really get these kids to understand what they're talking about here, because if they get charged with certain crimes, like some of those are felonies, like and we're not trying to ruin a kid's life, but we also need these kids to understand what it is they're doing, because it is taking massive amounts of resources away from not only the public school system, the public school district, our officers, our SROs, our detectives. Like, it is just becoming a massive undertaking, and we're going to work every single one of them, and we're going to keep doing that until this settles down. But we really need to get a hold of the parents, and because at this point now we're trying to figure out what is the best deterrent, and we're starting to just book kids into jail every time, no matter what. And we're hoping that point starts getting home to some of these kids, that listen, if you do something like this, whether you think it's a joke or not, you're going to end up going to jail for it, because of all these other things that are going on around us. And we just don't want kids to continue. And it could be as something as silly as, oh, we had a kid in the hallway, oh, I'm going to shoot up the school. You can't say that in a school anymore these days, regardless of whether or not you've never touched a gun, owned a gun, ever, your parents don't have a gun. The fact is, you said it in a hallway with 20 other kids around, and kids are scared, parents are scared. The deterrent is going to be, we're going to start taking kids to jail, and that's what we've been doing.
Still to come on MOMCAST. When you take some of these kids to jail, are their parents shocked? Are they so surprised that stuff like this is happening? How are they not seeing this?
This is where moms meet up for advice, info, and insight on the 12 News Plus app.
You get like this warm hug.
Go to News in the top bar and watch MOMCAST with Emma Jade. Download 12 News Plus on these smart devices.
Welcome back to this special edition of MOMCAST. I'm Emma Jade. We are outside of Stapley Junior High in Mesa, one of the many schools in the Mesa Public School District dealing with online threats over the last several weeks. We've been talking to police officers and getting their take on exactly what has happened, because they're taking these threats extremely seriously. We're talking 15 arrests that have been made. Here's more from my interview. When you take some of these kids to jail, are their parents shocked? Are they so surprised that stuff like this is happening? How are they not seeing this?
Well, a lot of times the parents are unaware, or a kid is just, how kids are, junior high, high school, kids are still developing, they're still learning, and they think it's funny, or they want to be the class clown, or they want to, do something like that, and they make an inadvertent statement, or how social media is now with kids, and they say something online, or they send a Snapchat or a text message. Well, those things don't go away regardless of kids thinking they do. They don't. And we're really pushing the see something, say something message to kids and parents. We're really pushing the report, don't repost, things like that, because if you get a message and you turn around and repost it to 30 of your friends, you're going to be liable as well. And those are the things we're really trying to get kids, but especially their parents, to understand.
What I think is so important is when they see this come across their phone, what should they do?
Great question. They can take it to their parents. Their parents can call in. They can call our non-emergency number. Of course, there's the SRO at school. There's a teacher. There's any person they feel safe with to bring that information to, we're asking them to do that, whether that be the teacher, their coach in a sports team, the principal, anybody, even the security guards, whoever it is they want or they feel comfortable bringing that information to, especially their parents. We would ask that the kids do that. And we'd also ask the parents, and I know parents don't like doing this, they feel like it's an invasion of privacy, things like that. But listen, I would rather, as a parent, check my kid's phone and have them mad at me than not check my kid's phone and have to get a call that my kid's in jail. Here's the great thing, too. All the kids in these schools, the majority of these kids, they want to be safe. They don't want to go to school and deal with this. So 95% of these things are getting reported by other kids, which is amazing, which means it is happening. We're just really trying to push it as much as we can because we want that to keep occurring. And when those kids are brave enough to come forward and say, hey, listen, to a parent, a guardian, a school teacher, whoever, hey, listen, this is what somebody showed me. We can go from there. I mean, we have really good SROs on campus. They're amazing. Our detectives are pretty diligent in their investigation process. So vast majority of these are what we would call threats. But then when we interview the kids, it's like, oh, I was making a joke. Oh, I'm really not doing that. My parent, So we'll go through a whole assessment. We'll go through a threat assessment. We'll interview the kids with their parents, with the school, and we'll go through an entire assessment on, and we give it like a scale on whether we think this is credible, whether we think it's a kid just being a kid. But the problem is it's to the point now where if you're joking around, we're sorry. You shouldn't joke around like that. So you're going to get charged. And some of these kids are getting taken down to the detention center, and that's a big shock for a kid who's never really been in trouble, isn't a troublemaker, made a stupid mistake, but you're going to go to jail and your parents are going to have to get you out of jail from there. So our goal is we don't want to do that, obviously.
Of course.
But
what else can you do?
Exactly. We really just need kids to understand that this is not a joking matter anymore.
No.
It's getting out of control, and we're going to have to do the enforcement arm of this as much as we can until they start getting that message.
And with this wave of online threats happening at schools all across the country, a lot of school districts are now changing their policies. Here's what's happening in Mesa. Every high school and junior high has at least one officer on campus. All high schools have metal detectors for students to walk through. Some junior highs now have metal detectors too, including here at Stapley. Doors, gates, everything locked, and students have to wear those ID badges on them at all times. Those are just some of the changes that have been made in Mesa Public Schools. But it's not just schools that are having to make changes. It's parents too, because of what's happening to their kids inside of these schools. Here at Stapley Junior High, there was a list that was circulating. Wasn't exactly explained what would happen to the kids that were on these lists, but yes, a list of names was going around the school. I talked to two parents whose children were on that list. What is the list? How did you find out about it?
So the list, as far as I understand, was a list of about 15 kids' names. It was a hit list. It wasn't specific on what exactly was going to happen to these kids, but it was enough that, my son's name was on the list and he wanted to be picked up from school that day because he was terrified of what was going to happen. There was a couple other kids on the list, and I don't think any of them went to school. Once that list was going around school, I think they all took a break from school, and it just made them feel not safe to be at school, which I don't blame them.
Had you been already before that been hearing about online threats, or was this just completely out of the blue to you?
So I heard about it going around. I know that's a trend, which is unfortunate. It makes me sad that that's what kids are trending online right now, and to me they seem more like general or like the entire school. I was shocked to find my son one of 15 kids.
Number one, you hear about threats, that's scary enough.
Yeah.
To have your child's name on a list, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, he just, to me, I'm like, there's enough things that 13-year-old kids are worrying about in 8th grade, and getting hurt or shot or killed at school should not be something that's even on their radar. I know for me growing up, not one day did I go to school worrying that I was going to get shot or hurt. And then I heard from my friend whose son was also on the list that her son was on the list, my son was on the list, and that there, in fact, was a list going around because her son had seen it twice that day by 2 different students showing it to him.
Still to come on this special edition of MOMCAST. Unfortunately, your daughter was also on this list. How did you find out? How are you feeling now? You've taken your kid out of the school. You've started at another school. Yeah. Are you feeling any settled, any peace?
For him, it's been a good change. However, we have a 6th grader that's going to be starting next year, and he right now is already asking if he's going to be allowed to go to Stapley with his friends. And we're just not sure. We've kind of had to tell him we don't know. Like, we'll have to see what happens this year. And to me, that makes me sad because I want our kids to be able to go to school where they want.
You went here?
Yes, I went here. I went to Mesa Public Schools, kindergarten to 12, and I just feel like it's not the same.
As a parent, how would you like things to change from here on out?
Just communication. I feel like communication with parents could solve so many problems. Whereas, or if they would have communicated with us before, and then my son would have said, "Oh, I'm worried about this." I could have come back and said, "Nope, the school already has this list. Don't worry about it. They're handling it this and this and this way," instead of just, I'm blindsided by this, hit list that my son is on.
How have you talked to your son about it? How have those conversations gone? And do you feel like you are in a better spot now? Because this is still really fresh. I mean, this happened just recently.
Yeah. So truthfully, one of the big things I've been talking to our kids about is making sure they understand how serious this kind of stuff is, and like just showing what has happened. I know that's a big thing right now too, is where students will do stuff and say, "Oh, it was a joke," or "I didn't mean it." And I'm like, you guys can't joke about stuff like this. It's not a joke. And to the kids on the list, it's not a joke. And I don't know, maybe the kid that wrote this list, to them it was funny or a joke. And I'm like, to have my son feel not safe at school and have us be inconvenienced that we're, transferring him schools and all these things, that's not a joke. And so that, for us, that's been the biggest takeaway, is just like, you can't control other people, but you can control what you do. And if you do ever hear something like this, then tell us immediately, so then we can be the ones, before it spreads around the school and before it gets too far and turns into this huge thing where students and teachers don't feel safe coming to school.
You, unfortunately, your daughter was also on this list. How did you find out?
Through the grapevine, unfortunately. And I mean, that's kind of how it's been happening, through Snapchat, through this, through that, social media. I'm like, shut it down. Just shut it all down. Because it's like, until we get a grip on this thing, that is what perpetuates the problem.
What did you talk to your daughter about? What did she say to you? Did she show it to you? How did this go?
She has just been through it, and it's really sad. And I'm like, why do these kids think it's so great that they did this to somebody else? What are parents doing that creates the disconnect where kids do not care about kids? I'm like, what is happening? So my biggest part of this entire scenario is, let's empower parents, who is the strongest point in a child's life, to be communicated with. Empowering parents to take their kids' phones. Kids they shouldn't have privacy. They didn't earn it. They don't pay for their phones. They don't pay for their home. They should not have privacy. And we have to do our due diligence in protecting themselves from each other, but also from themselves. And in order to do that, we have to take those phones, go through those phones, and if this list would have been caught way back when, there's discrepancies in when that first list came out, but if it would have been caught, it would not be recirculating today. And that's the sad part. It's like, where is the parent of this child? And I want the school to take action in empowering parents to take their kids' phones, checking their kids' phones, and not being afraid to turn their kids in. And that's the biggest issue I think we have with parents wanting to protect their kids. It is protecting your kid by turning them in, because they're going to learn a big lesson now before it's too late and they end up in jail. It's about teaching your kid not to repost, absolutely, but it's also about a parent taking the power into their own hands to put a complete stop to all of it and eliminating the problem altogether.
How are you feeling now? It's been, a week or so since all of this has kind of come about. Where are you now with all of it? And what are your conversations with your daughter like now? I mean, she still has to go to school.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem, is her feeling safe at school. And I think you can do your very best to talk to them about focusing on the positive, focus on the good of people, and do all this stuff. But she has to look at her peers, first of all, not knowing who put that list out. Not knowing who the person is, it leaves an absence of, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just so sad.
Who can she trust?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, the person sitting in front of you could be that person that put that list out. And it's like, why in the world would they protect that kid? Number one, you should not be protecting that kid. So I feel like protecting the kid is wrong on everyone's part. And I feel like their name needs to be plastered everywhere so that my kid can feel safe and they can know that that person is no longer in their presence.
How is your daughter now, and how are you feeling getting back into the swing of things, getting back into school?
I feel good that she's there. I feel good that she is feeling comfortable. She isn't over it. I want to encourage kids out there. I wish so much kids would watch the news, but I want to encourage parents and kids to really stop and think about what you're doing before you do it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this whole entire thing is, who am I going to hurt with this action? Who am I going to make feel uncomfortable? And maybe that's what they want. Of course, some of them do. But in the end, when you suffer the consequence, you're only hurting yourself as well.
Something really important to note here, communication was the biggest takeaway for both of those women. And it's something that the Mesa police officers also believe in. Communication, we gotta talk to our kids because yes, even a joke will be investigated. And yes, even a joke could lead to an arrest and charges. They are cracking down all across Arizona because we have to help our kids feel safe in schools. And I want to share with you this new mantra that's being said here at Mesa Public Schools, because I think it's really important and very powerful for our kids to just live by this. According to the superintendent, if your student sees or hears anything that threatens the safety of students or staff, report, don't repost, and tell a trusted adult immediately. I want to thank you so much for joining us on this special edition of MOMCAST. I'm Emma Jade. We'll see you next week, Thursday, 2:30, right here on 12 News.